Hi, everybody. Hope you're doing marvelously well. We're moving into our new studio. Look at this. It's very exciting. We have been moving. It has been chaotic. The SSL went out today. We packed up a ton of stuff. We've still got another day of moving. It is crazy. But what is exciting is we're going to be interviewing a rather wonderful person, Karen Down. Karen Down, strangely enough, but actually worked for SSL for years. And I wanted to talk to her because she's an amazing part of our industry. So Karen started a brand new company with Russ Hughes called The Support Squad. So you probably know Russ from Production Expert. So let's talk to Karen.
I was born in England, but I grew up in Tasmania.
Now you're saying it. Now, of course, I hear the accent come through.
Just a little bit, absolutely. I wanted to be in London because I wanted to be a recording engineer. So I did all of that nice going to school in a lovely area, taking a great big long bus ride for an hour to get to the school because we lived on a farm in the bush. And then all of a sudden you've got, London and something very, very different.
Where were you in London? Whereabouts did you live?
Oh, gosh. Fulham and Parsons Green and Hammersmith and Lambeth, all over the place. I decided at 15 that I was going to be a recording engineer. And I had looked on the back of my cassettes sitting there on the farm and I could see the name Bob Clearmountain. And I'm like,
okay,
I want to grow up and work with Bob Clearmountain. So my parents wouldn't let me leave home at 15. I had to get a bit more of an education. So at 17, they bought me a ticket and I came to London and wrote to every single recording studio. Got out the phone book, as you did in those days, and wrote to everybody. And I got on a youth training scheme that put me in a studio for £10 a week. And it started there. I was really, really lucky to get a place and, begin my journey. The strange thing is so that was when I was 17. I actually met Bob Clearmountain when I was 19. And I told him that I was far too inexperienced to possibly be working with him at this point in my journey. But I did. So, I achieved my life ambition at 19.
That's amazing. So wait, there's a lot to unpack here. So what was that first studio that said, yes, you can come and work? What was the first place?
This was a tiny little studio called West 3 in Acton. And they had an insurance agency out the front and they had a recording studio out the back. And that was great because I learned about tape machines. They had an Allen and Heath Syncon B, really old console. And they had a large live room. So they used to get in session drummers, etc. And those session musicians taught me how to mic up kit, which was fantastic. And then after a year there, I moved to a studio called Advision, which was a bit bigger.
Very famous studio, yes.
Absolutely.
Yes.
And I was one of 2 female assistants working in that studio, which was strange because in London at that time, there were very, very few female assistant engineers.
What year was this?
This must have been around 1988.
I was probably recording in and around London that time. I don't think from the mid-late 80s to when I left in 95 to come to the US for the first time, I don't remember ever seeing a woman assistant or a woman engineer.
Yeah.
In any studio.
It's changing now. London has a lot more freelance assistant female engineers, which is wonderful. Absolutely wonderful. But back in the day, it was just me and a lady called Avril McIntosh who was there in that studio, and they had 3 rooms, and that's where I first met my first SSL console. So, so definitely, doing the total recalls, being on those mixing sessions and falling in love with the SSL.
But that's quite a leap. So just 1 year in the studio in Acton, then leaping to Advision. How did you get the gig?
I think they were just advertising and somebody told me to rock up. And I did. I got a few jobs by just showing up and sort of saying, this is what I do. And I started there as their receptionist and then moved on to doing the assisting. So as ever in London at that time, you had to start as a receptionist before they let you loose on the clients. So that was a good
Right.
that was a good intro to what the world was about.
Which is quite comical because of all of the jobs, the receptionist is probably the most important job in a studio outside of producer and engineer, because it's the first representation of a studio that's given.
Absolutely.
That's-
Yeah.
Like we don't know if you're going to be good enough to be an assistant, but we're going to put you at the front.
No, so true. So true. And then after that, I went to work for a studio. It went through several name changes. It was first called CBS, and then it was called Whitfield Street, which you might have heard of. And then it became the Hit Factory London. That one was a good job to get because I met a freelance engineer at Advision, and he was going to be doing a session on the brand new SSL at Whitfield Street. And he said to me, well, you've gone freelance. Why don't you come and, be my assistant? Because, I enjoy working with you. And I was like, sure. And the studio says, well, do you know the G series? And I went, yes, absolutely. And the engineer and I looked at each other and basically went, we'll figure it out as we go. So I was there for a couple of years and that was amazing.
Were you just poring over the manual every night trying to figure it out?
I loved mix sessions. So I would watch the engineers working. Recording sessions, everybody came with an entourage. You were treated a little bit like everybody's gopher, apart when you were miking up and dropping into record and that sort of thing. So I much preferred myself and the engineer producer and the mixing sessions where I could really get to understand how the patchway worked, how the equipment worked, how the desk worked. And, it was just learning by observation. It was a fantastic time. And I really enjoyed things like total recalls, like writing down all of that outboard gear. So when they came back in to do remixes, you could set it all back up again. I mean, do you remember stuff like that?
God, yes. I'm sitting in front of an SSL.
I know, look at that.
So you went from receptionist to assistant
At Advision.
at Advision. Now you go to Whitfield and you're coming in as an assistant.
Yeah.
What's the turning point to engineering?
Well, I never really did that turn.
Okay.
I assisted for a good 5-6 years. I loved it because you could become a real integrated part of the session, and you could stand in for the engineer, and you could do bits and pieces like that whenever he wanted a day off, and there were things to record. So there was enough going on, but I realised that I wasn't going to be famous as regards a famous engineer producer type person. And it was like, if I don't want to do, if I'm not going to be that, what am I going to be? So what I did was decide a little after the Germano family took over the Hit Factory London, a little after that, I decided I'm going to give up engineering and I'm going to have to think about what I want to do.
That's a big step.
That was because since I was 15, I'd only ever wanted to do that journey. And then all of a sudden, that journey's not there. And a friend of mine said to me, why don't you come and stay with me in Oxfordshire and you can phone up SSL and ask for a job. So I did for a week. And eventually I got called in and they're like, you've been bugging my receptionist for a whole week. So we've come in and we're having a chat, and quite nicely they hired me on the spot to look after their studio facility, which was absolutely wonderful. So I got to go back to working with a 4K, except this time I was teaching people how to use a 4K, which is something I'd done for engineers when they were coming into work in the studios anyway. So I started my training journey at that point.
That's interesting. So you hear, Eric, so if we have any issues, we know who to call.
Absolutely. I mean, people do still ask me questions on how the 4K works, which is very, very nice, seeing as I have to dig into my memory. But I have, I don't know if you've seen it, I did a video for Sound on Sound on the SSL 4000 automation.
I did see it, yes.
Oh my gosh. Now, what people didn't realize, and this is letting the cat out of the bag, was that when I started that video, I didn't actually know that the cut automation was broken.
Oh dear.
So I got halfway through and I'm like, right, now we're going to automate some cuts. And it was like, okay, right, everyone stop. That's not working, is it? So yeah, so I nagged my way into SSL, which was lovely. Yeah, just started doing a lot of their operational training.
Were you doing it predominantly in Oxford, or were they sending you on a plane around the world and you're sort of arriving fresh with the console going, okay, this is how you use it?
Pretty much. I mean, for the first 4 years, I was on a plane a lot. And 2 years into that, the J series came out. And so I went to Right Track and Record One in LA when they first got their J series consoles. I mean, that was just a wonderful time. I mean, that console, talk about something close to my heart. I loved teaching people, even though there was such resistance because it had, a pen and tablet or a tablet and puck, etc. It just didn't, gel immediately with a lot of engineers. But there were a lot of people that did know about, know enough to come and sit there and be trained. Though there was one situation where I was hauled out of a studio and taken to another studio in LA to be shown a proper automation system, and that was GML automation system. And I sort of watched the guy, explain it to me, and I'm like, right, well, you're never going to like the SSL automation system then, are you? However, I know that he did go back and like it eventually, but it's interesting times. With the J series, there was a guy at SSL who'd been very much involved with the J series console. And for sales, he would come in and he would do, the technical speak that people wanted to hear about Class A and the rest of it. And then I would do the, right, let's get down and let's use it and let's make sounds come out.
Perfect.
And, and people really enjoyed that. And my demonstrations and my training was could be very physical. I wasn't above, tapping somebody around the ear if they weren't quite getting it. You're not really allowed to do stuff like that anymore. But certainly, joking and shouting and jumping up and down, because when you're training consoles, whether it's a broadcast console or a live console or a recording studio console, it can be really boring for people. So keeping engagement was really, really important. And
Agreed.
I at one point used to train with puppets that used
Wow.
to, I know, I did this at Right Track when they first got their SSL. I went out to FAO Schwartz and bought some puppets and, little hand puppets. And I had a lion.
Is there video footage or photographic evidence of this?
I've got one of them here that I can pop off camera and get in a second. But there was a lion that used to represent hardware. So the hardware of the J series console, which was familiar to everybody. So he would jump around and he'd be very, very happy. And then there was the squirrel that lived in my hair that was rather nervous of the new computer, and he would keep on disappearing into my hair. And because the computer was the new thing that people were quite scared of because it took up acreage on the console and it was very different. And then for the automation, I had Automation Mouse. And he was a little...
Automation.
Yeah, he was a little finger puppet. And he actually appears. He appears in the video I did for Sound on Sound. He's actually sitting by a little speaker. Yeah, he became infamous People liked the puppets. They liked the idea of the puppets. I know.
Automation mouse.
Automation mouse, yes.
I love that.
Well, he was very good at match and play and other sort of switch-based automation. He's very good on that.
Do you still do like 4,000 teaching? Do people still hire you specifically to do that?
If they ask, yes, I will.
Yeah.
I have done. It's fun. Basically, it seems like everybody knows how to use them now. If they do ask, yes, I'll go. Absolutely.
So, SSL.
Yes.
You're flying around the world. You got the J. Were you there for the K as well?
Then I burnt out and I left SSL.
Because you're flying how many times a year?
Yeah, I was flying an awful lot. And it was, like I say, the first 2 years of the J series, and I was never at home. And I was headhunted by Euphonics, who had an office at the time in London. So I went there. After 6 months, decided I wasn't really feeling it. So I disappeared up to AMEC. Do you know AMEC consoles? The Mozart.
I know AMEC very, very well. Yeah. My main console for years was their cheap range. I had a TAC Scorpion.
Oh my gosh, okay.
When I was up and coming. I loved that console. To this day, I still recommend to people, if they're trying to get a lot of channels, there's still something lovely about walking into a studio and seeing a console. And even if it's not necessarily your workflow that you're mixing through it, to get a bunch of inexpensive mic pre's. My TAC Scorpion in like 2001 cost me $1,250. It was a 24 channel. I don't know if, and when I sold it for $750, and they're still only about $1,500, $2,000. And they're good sounding, usable mic pre's. And how else are you going to get 24 channels of mic pre's to put across a kit?
Yeah.
And get a great, and not even just AMEC or TAC. I mean, I saw an Einstein for sale the other day for $5,000.
Oh, are you kidding me?
Yeah, you remember those were, I think I was at September Sound in 95. Remember September Sound?
I haven't heard that studio name for a long time.
Yeah, remember they had an Einstein. They had an Einstein in there.
Oh my God. I wrote the manual for the Einstein, the operational manual.
Wow. I think I looked at it. That was a bang for the buck console. The Einstein, for people that don't know about it, it was I suppose considered a large format, but it wasn't very big, and it had so many functions in it. It was insane. It was like, okay, I could do what and route where and do, it was insane.
So they had the Einstein and they had the Galileo as well.
Yeah.
So, yeah, absolutely. So I think I did those 2 operational manuals. Stayed with them for 2 years and did a lot of, presentations, working with R&D, testing software, that sort of thing. And then I decided when I got to 30 that I was going to give up audio.
You've done a lot and you're still only 30.
Oh, yeah. And I ran away to Cornwall, as you do. The only job I could get in Cornwall was teaching 16 to 19-year-old lads about audio. So
in a high school, in a
college.
Okay, 16 to 19, so sixth form.
Yeah, so it's basically not a real escape from the life of audio. It's like, right.
But more of a 9 to 5 job, less of a.
It was part-time, so I got to do an HND in IT, and I got a teacher's qualification out of it. So I was just down there a year, and then SSL called me back up, and this was 2000, and they said, would you like to come back? And I was like, oh, yes, absolutely.
You're a year away in Truro.
Yeah, absolutely. I don't think I've been back to Cornwall.
Yeah,
I know it's where everybody in England goes on holiday, but no, it's just a little too quiet. So I went back to SSL in 2000 and stayed until, the end of 2021. Wow. 21 years back there. So 25 years in total, but 21 year stint most recently.
So what did your 21-year stint involve? What were you doing in those 21 years? Obviously a lot.
I did a lot of training across all of the consoles. basically. Traveled for a good 15 years. Not so much that it sort of like knocked me out completely, but did a lot of traveling. So have visited an awful lot of countries, an awful lot of studios, broadcasters, huge range, which has been wonderful because there's not many jobs where you get to travel the world on the company dime, which is very, very good. So everywhere from Russia to China to, everywhere in Europe and Australia. So I got to go back to Australia on the company dime. So that was good. Towards, the latter part of my time there, I was team leader of the service and support department. So got to do a lot more paperwork, much more involved with selling warranties and thinking about products before they become a product to go out the door. I mean, in service, it's post-sale that you're most worried about, but you get to do a little more pre-sale, a little more software testing, a little more, documentation involved, stuff when you're parked in the office, and then you have a team of people that then start traveling the world, and they're younger people as well, which, tends to work because you do, after 15 years, I was a little bit, I don't really want to go out anymore. That sort of led to my next sort of life change, because once I'd sort of been there at SSL, you become part of the furniture, you become part of the family. And then I realized sometime along the way, when the pandemic came, I'd fallen out of love with the music industry, and this was a big thing. I thought I listen in the support department to things going wrong, and I love the whole problem solution type job where people would phone up with problems and you'd provide the solution and you'd build those relationships. And that was I loved about the job. But there was a part of me that had just disappeared. And so after the pandemic, coming out of it, I'm questioning, what do I want, and in the end, it was a move away from SSL.
I can't imagine 21 years in one stint and 2 years in another. I mean, that's more than, that's most of your working life. That's most of your professional career.
Absolutely. So it was absolutely massive to actually not have that anymore. And and you go through a lot of emotion, you go through a lot of mental stuff. And I decided that I was going to say yes to every single opportunity that came my way, regardless of whether I felt brave enough to do it or not. I was going to say yes. And that's what I did. So I had a year of doing the most insane things, such as the video. I would never have done the video if it was that. I would never have started writing blogs or writing for magazines. I would never have gone to work on a building site that was installing speakers and, walking around in a hard hat with PPE. I would never have done that. And across that time, I started spending a lot of time back in studios. I started talking to engineers again. And I fell back in love with the business, which, was so good for my heart and soul, and just spending time with consoles and the odd tape machine. I was never a big Pro Tools fan. I know it's a tool. I know it's something that people use every day, and it, you get wonderful work out of it, but it wasn't a tape machine. So I guess we're at the point where the support squad became a reality.
So what is it you're doing then? So tell us, what is the support squad?
With the support squad, we have people come to us who are developers, who really just want to sit and develop. They want to write code, and they have so many other parts to their business that they just don't have time to do it. So that's where we come in. We can come in and we can write your manuals for you. We can do your beta testing for you. We can do your customer support for you. We can make short videos of your products. We are there to fill the gaps.
You launched during the pandemic?
No, we launched 3.5 weeks ago.
Oh, wow.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
So when Russ was telling me about it last month, it really was right at the beginning of the beginning.
Absolutely. Russ basically, he phoned me up from a beach and just said, I've had this idea through conversations that we'd had. And he goes, do you want to be part of this? And I'm like, of course. And we then had a meeting. And after about 3 meetings with everyone, it was, shall we do this? Yes. And that was 3.5 weeks ago. And like I said, we've been talking to prospective clients, doing proposals, just getting the interest started. So it's fantastic. It's really exciting. It's just a matter of, talking to people. And I appreciate that, not everybody's going to have beta testing for us to do straight away. So that might be something that comes along, 3 or 4 months down the line. It's going to be, as and when people need us. So it's letting people know we're here when you need us. So
amazing.
Yeah.
Thanks ever so much. I hope you enjoyed that. Thank you, Karen, for taking the time and telling us a bit about your journey. I really appreciate it. Thanks, everyone. Stay tuned for more information on our new studio. It's very, very exciting. So long, farewell, auf Wiedersehen, au revoir, adios, goodbye.